Excited for our discussion today. So as we get through another minute or two of people coming in, we'll get off to the races. But definitely excited for this conversation. It's one that's near and dear to my heart. Being somebody who's spent a lot of time in his career in different sales leadership roles and sales roles. So excited to have this discussion. So all right. All right. Well, I think we're slowed down in the people coming in. There'll be a bunch of people coming in as we move forward, but um, again, really excited for this conversation. Sales hiring or compensation-based sales hiring, hiring in general, comp management, customer service, direct, indirect sales, BDRs. It's always been an interesting process for me, and I've developed my own model over time that worked for me, but may not be the best fit for everybody. But it's definitely an area that has a lot of intricacies to it in terms of how we assess and evaluate sales talent. So I'm going to go into that and turn over to Michael in 2 seconds. I just wanted to go over one thing real quick. Um, we have a Halloween discussion coming up. So our um, the 31st is a Thursday, and so it's when we're going to have our discussion. So we're going to talk about everything that's scary in recruiting for 2025. The good news is that wasn't scary enough. So I asked Ben Eubanks and Joel Cheeseman to join us. So we had some scary faces on the call. So it was truly frightening. So that should be good. But it should be a fun discussion. And I hope you guys can join. And the fun part of it is we are going to do a Zoom Halloween costume contest. So it's only from about here up that you can put a costume on, but whoever's best costume definitely will win. And so only other couple things is, I appreciate anybody here who joined one of the board conversations. Thank you for your time and your feedback. I will have updates out soon. And as we always ask, um, the power aspect of talk for other members is to learn about vendor reviews. And if there's any vendors you think should be in our marketplace, definitely let me know. I'd be happy to go out and connect and add them in because I want this to be a resource that's valuable for all of us to get feedback and to make decisions around technologies that can help us in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael. Michael is the CEO of the SV Academy, and I'm going to let him kind of talk a little bit more about what that is and what it does. But more importantly, I think the aspect that Michael brings to the table is a really good understanding of the evaluation of incentive-based roles. And so that's kind of the goal for today's discussion. I'm going to shut my PowerPoint off so we can see each other. And the only final thought is if you can turn your camera on, that's awesome. If you can't, we certainly understand. But the more people we can see, the better. So thanks everyone for being here. Michael, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you having me today and welcome everybody. Look, I kind of just wanted to start with a few housekeeping rules. I'm not going to do a presentation. I don't want to lecture at everybody and kind of give you a presentation and walk you through what we think is, how everything should be done. We're here to kind of share best insights and practices. And ultimately, I would love for this to be a discussion. And so with that, look, I know you're all on mute, but at any time you want, feel free to come off mute, ask questions, type them in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. But let's try and make this as discussion-based as possible. So just wanted to start with a quick question here, before we kind of dive into bios and backgrounds and who we are at SV Academy. Look, how many of you are seeing an uptick in hiring and headcounts at your companies?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Love it, love it. Seeing a couple hands. We're seeing flat from Peter. I know we've gone through, oh, there we go. Some more thumbs up. I think we've been coming from a pretty crazy market for the past few years in terms of turning off a lot of the hiring engine, turning it back on, turning it off again. But I feel like what we've been seeing across the ultimate market is things are starting to ramp back up a bit. And just by a show of hands here, it looks like that may be the case. Now, with that happening in terms of either an uptick or keeping things flat, how many of you are working with the same budget or increased budget or lower budgets for that as well? Thumbs up. I think that means probably increase in budget. We've got slightly lower, same budget, slight increase. All right. So it varies. Okay. So ultimately, I think across the board, we're seeing either staying the same or slightly, Adam, all the above. Okay. So it looks like overall either staying the same or maybe on average slightly lower. So kind of sounds like leadership says, hey, we're hiring more, but you're getting less of a budget to do that. And if I had to guess, it probably means that we want you to hire and we need them all to start this afternoon. So a lot of pressure on folks. All right, good. Seeing some head nods. Yeah, so ultimately, this seems to be one of the biggest issues that we're seeing, especially from the sales and customer success side of the equation, and any form of go-to-market positions. A lot of what we look for is how are you sourcing talent? Where is this talent coming from? So by way of background, I'm the CEO here at SV Academy, relatively new. I'm about 6 months in. I've got Ryan Scanlon here. He is our VP of Partnerships, joined me as well at the same time from our previous boot camp. I have been in this future of education and future of workspace for about 14 years. I built a company that connected community and technical college students to jobs. Started off as a service-based company where we literally gave a full-time employee to the community colleges, worked inside the career services arms, tried to understand how students think, how they search for jobs, and then ultimately how do they actually connect with employers. And over time, we productized that, turned that into a job board, ran that for about 5.5 years, and then that got acquired. And since then, I've been working with venture capital and private equity funds in this future of education and workspace, plugging into portfolio companies. I've been at everything from AI chatbots, connecting students to jobs, to other job boards, to the bootcamp space. And ultimately, what we've been trying to do is change the way students actually find jobs, trying to eliminate student debt, trying to ensure career outcomes, and then make life easier for employers that are hiring and do it in a way where it doesn't cost them anything. So, in terms of sources of talent, I think one of the hardest things that we see for these entry-level folks is that there's not a very good source of go-to-market talent. Schools today don't train for sales or customer success. There's degrees for finance and accounting and even marketing, but there's no sales degrees. In fact, less than 4% of schools across the country actually train specifically for sales. So the way you're actually evaluating talent has been pretty difficult, trying to identify resumes with people that may not have the right experience or any experience at all. And certainly being able to judge from their educational backgrounds, whether or not they actually have the right skill sets. So part of what we're going to talk about today is not only the sourcing of the talent, the evaluating of the talent, and then of course the onboarding of that talent. So I guess my last question to the group here before we kind of jump in is size of companies. If you guys want to throw this in the chat here, are you SMB, early stage, later stage, public, 1,000 plus, 10,000 plus headcount? What does that look like? Very exact number there, Peter. I think you may be the only company, including myself, that knows the exact number of employees. So that's very impressive. Approaching 900. All right, we've got some public, 10,000 plus. Reese, 500. All right, not for profit too. All right, so we're all across the board here. Wow, 30,000 plus for US Americas. Okay. All right, so we've got a very vast array of people. So In terms of the actually sourcing of talent, does anybody actually work with schools, or do we rely primarily on job boards, staffing firms, recruiting firms, any form of those third parties there? And again, feel free to jump off mute and chime in. Job boards mostly. Schools and third parties. Yep, handshake, more job boards. Recruit, yep. Okay, so it sounds like college fairs, things like that. Okay, so we're pretty much all across the board, but it looks like primarily we're looking at job boards, even for entry-level talent here. So the sourcing of talent, we're all looking in the same places. So we're all trying to fight for the same type of talent and evaluate them in the same type of way. In other words, they probably have a basic profile. They're probably very early in their careers. So not much to see on that profile. We're looking at resumes. They say the average time we spend on resumes are 3.5 seconds. So you're glancing real quick and trying to decide whether or not that they should go to the next level there. So in terms of the actual evaluating of talent. So we're looking for a few different things here. So first thing is we always look for confidence. You know, confidence is key. When we have individuals who actually believe in their abilities and can convey what those ideas are, and they can do it in an assertive and convincing way, that's a big flag for us, green flag, and that this is probably somebody who can clearly and articulate who they are, where they come from, and their communication skills. We're always looking for basic stuff like maintaining eye contact and positive body language. You know, the candidates that make appropriate eye contact, they sit or stand with confidence and use gestures to reinforce their message. They tend to be people who are going to be much better about conveying who your company is and what the product is that they're trying to get, or service that they're trying to get you to buy into. Decisive responses to questions. You know, candidates who answer questions promptly and with assurance, avoiding unnecessary ambiguity or second guessing themselves. These are the types of things that we really want to stand out in that first interview there. Handling challenges or objections smoothly. So when they're faced with questions or hypothetical scenarios, is the candidate, are they able to remain composed? Do they address those issues directly and provide thoughtful solutions to those questions? And then, of course, demonstrating self-awareness and honesty. You know, the candidates that acknowledge areas of growth or past mistakes confidently, showing a strong sense of self-awareness without undermining overall competence. These tend to be the people that we're looking for. There are certain questions that you can ask for this. You know, I know there tends to be a lot of generic questions that are in the interviewing process, but some of the ones that we really like to ask to get them talking and see how they communicate who they are and where they come from is, can you tell me a time in a workplace where you've had to navigate a difficult situation or a mistake that you've had to resolve and how you resolve that? Being able to communicate within that team, communicating up to a manager, explaining what went wrong, how it went wrong, and then ultimately how they fixed it. What made you excel in your last position? And why would you be a good sales role? This is what we're always trying to get feedback on. Like, what would your coworkers say about you? So these are kind of the very basic types of questions in terms of identifying what their level of confidence is. And one of the big takeaways, there are so many different types of backgrounds and experiences that, and personalities, frankly, that are good at sales. You know, for me personally, my first job ever, I was a solution consultant doing pre-sales, showing up for demos. I worked with account executives. And the first time I ever went on site with somebody, the account executive was almost the bro-y type. He was the guy who took everybody out for drinks afterwards, who's cracking jokes. And I always thought, okay, so that's what you have to be. You have to be one of these kind of easily relatable people who everybody loves and is the center of attention. The very next deal I went on, our account executive who ran that deal, for lack of better words, he was a nerd. He was a computer guy who was fantastic. He knew the product better than our own product designers. he would get into the details. He worked so closely with the CTOs. And in that quarter, he was the highest revenue generating AE that we had on the team. So my mind got completely blown about, okay, what actually makes somebody good at sales? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the most relatable, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you know the product better than everybody in the room. So all different types of experiences and backgrounds there. One thing that they all seem to have in common, and this is what we're always looking for, especially for entry level, a passion for sales. So when they demonstrate their enthusiasm for engaging with customers, their eagerness to learn and grow within the field, if they show up saying, hey, this is what made me successful at my last company or in my role in school, but I'm looking to X, Y, and Z. I'm trying to improve in these ways, shapes, and forms. Those are always massive green flags for people. And are they proactive in their approach to overcoming challenges and driving results? Energy. You cannot de-emphasize energy. It is one of the most crucial and important things when you're looking for anybody in that go-to-market space. I'd say when we talk with the recruiters nonstop, it's one of what's the biggest reason why we decided to reject a candidate. They just didn't show up excited for the job or the role. They wanted to see some level of energy and enthusiasm there. And of course, proactive engagement with customer scenarios. So throw out a scenario, see how the candidate demonstrates a keen interest in understanding the customer needs. Are they able to empathize and think from that point of view and ask insightful questions, maybe even offering tailored solutions to those? But again, it's all about eagerness to learn and improve, evidence of persistence and resilience. So can the candidate actually provide specific examples of how they've handled rejections and setbacks in the past? And most importantly for us, it's goal-oriented mindset. You know, where are you going to be in 6 months, 1 year, 12 years from now? What do you want to do? Is this your ultimate goal? Are you here to stay in sales and grow within sales? Do you want to help develop the company itself? Or is it more about you and your paycheck, which we're going to see quite a bit for salespeople. Everybody seems to be very money motivated, and that's not a bad thing at all. Preparation.
It's definitely.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I just want to say on the money motivated as a longtime salesperson, that is absolutely an aspect that I always evaluated for, not in a negative way, but in a competitive way. So what I used to look for is people who played individual sports. They like to compete, and they like to compete on their own. And I always found that as an interesting aspect to help me understand that they like to have goals and go after them and see if they can break things. So I don't know if that factors in, but I've always found that to be a great aspect of the sales hiring process.
The best candidates we've always seen in the past, either military backgrounds, athletes. The number one that we actually see at SV Academy, former teachers. Teachers are fantastic. If you have to deal with a classroom full of toddlers and you can work with them and not go crazy, you can probably work with pretty much any customer under the sun. So those are absolute ideal backgrounds and experiences that you're looking for. And frankly, everyone has some type of experience, no matter what their background is. That the question is can they convey that background to you in a way where it shows, oh, they understand the role that they're getting themselves into, and here are some of the traits that I have in my past. It's absolutely crucial to finding a way to relate your past to the role that you're getting into. Preparation. You know, I can't tell you how many times we've had somebody come onto a call and they're applying for the wrong company. And it blows my mind how people can do this, but it happens all the time. So basic preparation. Are they showing up? Demonstrate their commitment to, thoroughly researching and understanding not just the role itself, but the company itself. It just showcases their dedication and attention to detail. So in-depth knowledge of the company itself. The candidate displays a strong understanding of the company's mission. Did they go to your website? Did they look at the about page? Did they read the mission, the values, the different types of products that you have? Any recent developments? Can they talk about things that happened in the news? Really, this just indicates that they did their homework and came prepared. And of course, again, understanding the role and the requirements itself. There is a complete difference from being an SDR that does 80 outbound calls a day versus an inbound appointment setter. And so do they actually understand which role they're applying for and why? Peter, I like sales candidates who are super motivated by a commission pay structure. Going back to the pay thing, like you want people who are motivated by money. Now, that can't be the only thing, but they have to be motivated by money. Otherwise, it means they're just here for a role, trying to get their foot in the door, and they'll figure it out from there. That's just the wrong type of candidate that you really want. So if they can reference specific company information during those answers, if the candidate integrates details about the company, again, going back to news or product launches, any kind of strategic initiative into their responses, this, again, shows that they've come prepared and they know what they're getting themselves into. And then, of course, I love seeing somebody who brings notes to an interview. If they're looking down and they're reading off something every once in a blue moon, that's totally fine with me. I want to know that they came prepared, they have notes, they've thought about this role and the company, and they actually have questions. Maybe they have an example resume that they're willing to send you right there on the spot, even though they may have sent it to you before. It just shows that they're prepared. A portfolio, any of these materials effectively support their answers and discussion points. So again, one of the questions we always ask is what do you know about SV Academy? What is your understanding of our residency program and how it actually works? And then what questions do you have about the program and training? So do you actually know who you're applying for again? I can't say enough about communication skills. We have so many different things in terms of our rubric that we're looking for. Are they clear and concise? Do they articulate their ideas? From a sales perspective, I always say an economy of words. If it takes you a long rambling spiel, which I kind of feel like I'm doing now, so again, anybody jump in with questions. Anytime people are rambling about what they want to talk about, it just means that they're kind of searching for that answer there. Clear and concise, economy of words, get to the yes. So even in an interview, if they're getting to the point that they're trying to make, you see people are nodding their heads, they're smiling, they're active. Awesome, you've just won them. Move on to the next point there. And that's something we always train in our sales as well, is to just eliminate the fluff words.
Yeah. 2 questions I'd love your thought on that I've always asked in a sales interview. I always go to when I remember hiring a salesperson, I say, look, first question is, tell me about a time you were told you were losing a deal, verbally told no by the decision maker, and you were able to understand their needs and turn that around better than and win. So show me a time you were going to lose and you won it. What did you learn and why? And then as soon as they answer that, I like to make them uncomfortable and say, okay, now tell me about the time you thought it was in the bank. You were spending the commission check. You were, at the dealership looking at the Maseratis. I know what you do, and you lost. And why did you lose that deal? What did you learn to make sure it didn't happen again in the future? Those 2 examples were always very telling aspects for me for, do they understand what's going on in the deal? And more importantly, can they learn as they go through different experiences to improve the craft of selling? Because I do think in some aspects, it is a craft, and you do need to apply yourself to get better at it.
It's all about adaptability and resilience there. And we always like to throw in those loophole questions where they're open-ended, but the point is to get them off their ball. If they have something prepared, they came in, we love that, but we want to kind of throw them some curveballs and see what they can do. And so that should, and it absolutely is a required part of the interviewing process there. And really, it's really just about quickly adjusting to new information or feedback? I mean, is the candidate receptive to feedback? I'd say, especially for early stage sales talent, this is one of the biggest issues that we see in terms of companies as they're onboarding. You know, Gartner says there's a 33% turnover in the first 90 days. That is always that crucial period. And we're going to get to the onboarding piece as well about how to effectively bring people into the organization and get them to adapt to your culture. But if you are not open to feedback, if you're constantly saying, well, I hear what you're saying, but, and pushing back, that's always a massive red flag for us. In fact, we see that students that are applying to the program, you know, we always go through 2 weeks of super intensive training. And that's usually the time where we'll pull people and say, you're not ready for an employer yet. I'm sorry. If you're going to be this defensive about things, you have to be able to take that feedback. And of course, you know, discussing those strategies for overcoming setbacks. You know, the candidate outlines practical approaches they've used to, you know, recover from failures or obstacles, emphasizing perseverance and learning from those past experiences there. So one of the questions we always ask for anything involving adaptability and resilience is discuss a time you received that constructive criticism and how did you react and what did you do to improve? My favorite part is, what did you do to improve? How are they able to elaborate on that? Coachability, and you know, we just touched on this here, but a willingness to learn and grow. It is, are you consistently asking questions? How do I get better? How do I improve? This is so crucial for early stage people that are breaking into the role themselves. Look, they don't know what they don't know. And if they're at least willing to say that, hey, I've got questions, I need clarification, those are always great signs. So even within the interview itself, how receptive are they to hearing feedback? You know, do you take time to actually give feedback during the interview? Hey, I really like the way you made that response there, but have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Or maybe I would have approached it a little bit differently. Does it actually demonstrate their openness to that learning?
Mm-hmm. So, Michael, one question for you. I definitely get, and we're having great conversations on the interviewing process. I'm curious, and I'm gonna preset the stage. I have never found one, so I'm saying that up front. Have you found any assessment tools that you feel do a good job assessing salespeople and being able to come back with a firm set of metrics? Because one of the things I've struggled with is talking to a hiring manager, and he interviews 2 salespeople. One I think will crush it, and one that's a fan of his favorite football team. And then he goes back and says, "Oh, I got to hire the Pats fan." And I'm like, dude, we got to make our number. That's what we're here to do. But I have often found it hard to have that data to say, no, candidate A, based on these attributes, fits better into our culture, our sales process, our technical, you know, I'm selling SDK, so I need a different mindset and skill of person compared to selling a SaaS-based subscription or something to that effect. I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million different tools and assessments that are out there. I think overall, all of them do a good job in terms of helping you identify what you're actually looking for out of an ideal candidate. I can't say one really kind of stands out to me. I'm always looking for these. So if anybody has any suggestions, throw them in the chat, email them to me. I'd love to learn about these different types of areas. I'm an investor in the early stage TA tech space. So if I can hear about these early stage, even better for me. But, you know, I always say, hey, look, let's take a step back before you're even doing your recruiting process and putting that job description out there. Have you assessed your internal top performers yet? Have you taken a look at all the people that not only are performing, but then again, also the people that are kind of middle of the pack and people that you're going to let go? And then, of course, the people that you have, like, what kind of backgrounds and experiences did they have? What did you see in their interviews? We always like to record our interviews. So in case we end up having a red flag, down the road, can we go back and take a look at their interview? What about it stood out to us? What sold us, or what was that kind of little flag that we thought, man, we can get over that hump, and ultimately just say, hey, we shouldn't have pulled the trigger on that, and put that into our rubric for screening next time. Today at SV Academy, we don't use any form of assessments, but again, I'm super open to learning about them, because we're scaling pretty quickly. I mean, we just went through this ourselves. Our team doubled in size over the past month and a half. And so we're trying to find better ways to optimize and scale ourselves. What is this? Criteria Corp is the best. Oh, Kat, you use that one too. So what made this one, if either Reese or Kat, if you guys don't mind coming off mute, what made these stand out to you in terms of their ability to actually screen for you?
Yeah, I can say that I didn't do a ton of research, but when I evaluated assessment tools, they were one of the few that seemed to include kind of the old school approach of like sociologically analyzing data with new information. Most of their employees seem to be PhDs, psychologists, analysts, and they're doing a lot of higher level data analysis for current customers, which means that then they have that data and that analysis to pour back into the system. So for me, I have found it's not necessarily like they have a great sales specific assessment. It's that they have a fairly reliable personality profile that seems to do a good job of highlighting the right strengths. And then they have a couple of additional things that you can add that look at things like conscientiousness, and like a few other kind of maybe newer aspects than I used to see in, it's like the predictive assessment or the DISC, or, some of the other ones that we've used in the past. So it feels a little bit more modern. It's pretty easy to use, and it feels fairly accurate in terms of looking at the combination of strengths and weaknesses.
Got it. And does anybody, when you're using any form of assessment, if you have them internally, do you have green flags? All of these people are 100%. If they pass with this certain type of, we'll call it EQ, these types of soft skill sets, they're 100% going to interview stage? And are there ones where you're just like, we don't even want to interview them and take a look at them? And what kind of descriptions is that?
Well, for us specifically, we've debated using them at the very start of the process, but we typically use them at the second step. So after there's been one interaction and some type of idea has been formulated, before you're looking at a face-to-face meeting or travel, that type of thing, you're typically looking at that to confirm, any thoughts that you've had, but it's not like an insane deal breaker.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's one of the big things that when we're working with companies, it's if you have an assessment, it's fantastic. We love them. Try not to use them first thing as a first line of screening. At least get them onto a phone call, have a quick little interview with them before you send them. Maybe make it step 2 or step 3 in the process. Use it more supplemental there.
But we do it before the key interviews so that people have that feedback and those suggested topics to follow up on.
Got it. Yeah, and really kind of identifying the right types of backgrounds. I think one of the hardest ones to identify is the entry-level talent pieces for these sales roles, because again, you don't have a whole lot to go on. So having these types of assessments, at the very least, it's additive. I would never say don't use one. It's more about where in the process are they best to use them.
Yeah, and to that, Tony asked in chat, are people doing the assessments prior to interviews, and what assessment they're using? So the assessment company that we're talking about so far is Criteria Corp, but there are a number of them out there. I do know Criteria Corp is good. a good service provider in that area. And for me, no, and I've led some fairly large sales organizations in my career, and I always wanted to talk to somebody first and just understand that before I put them into any type of process. One, because it costs money, but two, because I want them to understand the value of the organization and sanity check whether I can get their head to nod like, yes, I want to come do this. Because if somebody can't nod their head about the purpose and the mission of a company, putting revenue aside, that is a salesperson that's going to fail. And they're going to fail because we're all going to, in a commission-based sales journey, you are always going to have some tough moments. And if you're not bought into the mission and the purpose of the company, that's a turnover waiting to happen. And that hits my bottom line. So I always like to have that conversation. Can I get this person excited about it? And if they are, and they can pass a couple basic elements, then I'll invest the assessment. But that's my personal model. I'm not saying it's perfect, but that's how I've always approached it. Love everyone else's thoughts, though.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that model as well. I mean, it's really, when it comes down to even just the sourcing of the talent piece, if everybody is getting people from job boards and you're not diversifying that talent pool of different channels and different avenues, look, higher education, like I know working with universities and colleges, absolute nightmare to get in front of them. Historically, one of the things that we've always seen when companies work with local colleges, they are going through a hiring sprint. They'll get access to a couple of resumes from folks, and then the next time they want to do it, they've got to rebuild that relationship with that employer there. So when it comes to diversifying, getting access to new, unique sources of talent, that's actually a great way to say, hey, what are the different types of skill sets that we should be looking for? And then how do we assess on those? And I'm with you on that. I like to have a first conversation with folks before we jump into the assessments there.
No, that's great feedback. And Tony, I completely understand that doing the initial level hire, having some type of assessment out of the gate could be a very beneficial area to do. I've been fortunate in my initial hires to usually be bringing in somebody that's in the first 1 to 3 years of their professional career, not coming right out of school, or the initial school hires I used to make were BDR, SDR roles. And like SV Academy, I had partners for that, specifically because the evaluation and interview, the conversion ratio from applicant to interviews to hires was voluminous, and it was a lot for my team to manage. So we partnered with somebody like Michael to help us get there.
Yeah, yep. It's the evaluating piece, and I'm super curious in terms of the interviewing process here. How many of you sit down with the hiring managers to really dive into the details and specifics? Because we always see that, especially for much larger organizations, there tends to be a bit of a disconnect between what's happening on the TA side and what's happening from the actual hiring managers. And then, of course, even the enablement teams. How hands-on is enablement? How much time do they have? Is your onboarding process going to be a 2-week sprint, or is it going to be a full 90 days of internal training piece in order to get people up to speed? And taking that information helps you be able to assess and screen on the front end of what you're looking for. The running joke from the student perspective or the early job seeker perspective is that this is an entry-level job. It's got entry-level pay, but they want a 20-year-old with 20 years worth of experience. And so breaking in is an absolute nightmare. So how do you overcome those things to get access to the best talent early stage?
Sure.
Yeah, so at this point, really, I want to open up the floor a little bit here in terms of, what have been some of the issues that people are facing today in terms of either it's sourcing, getting access to better qualified talent, or if it's during the actual interviewing process, or most importantly, that onboarding process. what has been some of the issues or things that you're just working through right now internally to see if you can help improve? And maybe we'll open it up to everybody here to give feedback and what's working within your organization.
Hey, Michael, this is Adam. I have one. So right now, my organization has kind of gone back and forth in terms of enterprise AEs and having a premium, if not a non-negotiable on, they have to have experience, and in my case, selling translation and localization services and software, right? So domain experience, right? Wanted to see how common that is for folks here. And we actually had an advisor who said, well, you just need really strong SaaS sellers. That didn't work out so much. And so now it's kind of like everybody's bruised and hurt, and we're back to, a recruiter's worst nightmare of like an infinitesimally small talent pool. And so I'm trying to get ahead of this to say, okay, at some point we're going to run out of prospects. So what's that next proxy experience, and how can I help like influence and be a strategic decision maker to help the team get over this kind of reliance on domain experience?
I've had a related situation.
Nice.
Our industry is pretty evenly situated between tech and education. So of course, the ideal background for all of our hiring managers, particularly for go-to-market customer-facing roles, is that they have to have the go-to-market experience, and they have to have the education experience, and they frequently have to have whatever other geographical or other kind of qualifiers make them a decent fit for the role. So we may get thousands of candidates and have 2 people who are qualified. But on top of that, it can be very difficult to find the person with the right background who also has the soft skills that the hiring manager is looking for. And so what I've found is helpful in those scenarios is to kind of ask the hiring manager to get outside of the notion of this is what I think I'm looking for, and ask them more about performance down the line. So how are you going to judge this person 6 months and a year from now? How will you prioritize certain skills? What's going to be most important when they're actually in the role? Are they going to need to be able to talk shop with, district level IT professionals? Or are they really going to need more to be able to motivate a team of other people to do things like that? And then I kind of work backwards from there to help prioritize the skills we're looking for.
Nice. Thank you, Kay.
Yeah. Kat, I love that. And I feel for you being in that ed tech space. I'm going to pick on the education space for some odd reason. It is the strongest willed area in which, hey, we need somebody with former educational background. They need to have XYZ years of experience. Oh, they're getting paid $45K base. So I see this all the time. It's the one industry where it's so hard to get people to take their foot off the necks of the recruiters to say, hey, I need somebody with tons of experience for this entry level position here. And any advice there, I'm open to that too. Trying to convince people to say, let's look at what they're actually capable of in terms of sales.
I actually, at a previous company, used the assessment data to do that. So I ran a study and had every employee take the assessment. And then I created a survey and had all of the managers, separate from that data, rank their people, what have you. And then we were able to look at the top people and see that they didn't have the backgrounds that we thought we were looking for, which it's not like it solved the problem, but it did give me, a little bit of validation and support.
Yeah, we always have to do the old pilot round where it's you're hiring 4 people, give us 2 of them. Let us show you that we can actually train people and onboard them properly to ensure that they're actually going to meet the expectations of the manager. It's like pulling teeth.
Well, the problem is most sales managers feel like they need a specific type of experience, and that's sometimes most relevant and sometimes not. Or also, if you're not willing to pay enough, what I've said is, we're like some, guy in the basement, pounding away on our video games, holding out for a supermodel. We want to, try to be reasonable too.
Yes, and then remind them about how much time it's going to take to find that unicorn, and what does that mean to you in your team's numbers in terms of quota of that seat going unfilled. We actually had to build a calculator to show folks this. Listen, at SV Academy, we do a great job about sourcing. We interview folks ourselves before we send them to you, and you interview them. Then they go through a 2-week super intensive boot camp to get trained on best practices. We customize it to whatever your internal enablement team needs. And then we'll support them for the next 90 days. And during that period, it's very much, okay, there's a little bit of a leap of faith here. It's something new, it's unique. But how does your team feel about not having enough butts in seats right now for the next 1 month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months of you not being able to have your full head count in order to meet the quota that the higher ups are demanding right now? So sometimes stepping out of the box and being able to backtrack and show, hey, look, that last unicorn, it took us 6 months for us to find that person for you. Do you want to go another 6 months of us going through this, taking away time from your day of having to do interviews? Or do you want to take a chance on a little bit of a more unique approach to finding talent? And who knows, you might find that somebody who's really good at sales can sell pretty much anything under the sun.
Well, I love to hear that we're not alone on our side at a large media company where they're only looking for people with, only radio sales experience or whatever it may be. We've got 500 plus hiring managers across the country and operate in 160 different markets. So we've got a lot going on. Glad to hear we're not alone, but sad to hear that, we aren't. But honestly, like for my team, we kind of do some testing to see who's going to be the first mover, right? Who's going to hire someone with those transferable skills? And then we use that as an example and their success as an example in those other markets that we're covering, right? To really say like, hey, Michael and Ryan are over here and they're doing great things with this type of talent. And that first mover cost has already been paid. You get some clout because everyone knows Michael and Ryan. They're great leaders. And then that helps kind of move the needle for those other markets. And if they're not doing that, talk to the leaders above them about some of those cases. And chances are they're going to have a quick come to Jesus about what they need to do to meet those numbers and hit that cost, that cost per hire and, cost of vacancy that's just so important that they don't realize is out there. But I also love Peter's point about setting expectations from the get-go. Right? Like that's what I'm driving, Peter, from your comment there, right? You've got to set those expectations, do some supply and demand mapping, right? Show them what's available versus what actually, what they're thinking about versus what actually exists. And the more you can do that and set those expectations and be a partner and an order taker, the further you can propel recruiting and relationships and the business.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. It's during our onboarding calls, we know something will go wrong if we're only talking to the head of sales development or we're only talking to the TA team. It's look, let's get everybody on a phone call and understand exactly what we're looking for and why. And Chris, I'm super interested with the size of your organization and everybody that is doing recruiting for you. Do you have a standard process for everybody in terms of the types of questions that they're asking, how they're doing their interviewing, what they're judging people on? Do you actually have like a very standardized rubric that can be copy and pasted across the whole organization? Or are you like some of the, I'll say one of the largest payroll providers that we work with? We have to start in one city because we know that hiring manager will just be innovative and try anything, and then slowly but surely start to roll it out. But we always target.
Yeah, I think you've got to see who's most progressive, see that it works, right? Put a plan together that's simple and can have success, and then try it out and then replicate it. And that's actually what we're doing right now. Talent acquisition for us is pretty much brand new. Over the last 3 years, we built it from nothing to what it is now. So it's been kind of a learning curve, right, for the business to partner with us. And I think our team has done a great job. Several of them are on this call to learn more from y'all. But really right now we're finishing up some testing on a new process that streamlines the process. It standardizes it. It gets managers thinking about those soft skills, and then it relates those back and kind of gives them the answers to the test on why this specific skill would translate back into sales, right? You may not have thought about it like this, but it will. And here's some questions that you can ask, some behavioral interview questions, right? We've got managers who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, managing teams who don't know anything about behavioral interview questions to help them out and, kind of give them a guide, right? We've got to guide them and teach them. Things have evolved. They do a great job of what they do, but maybe not interviewing. So let's help them evolve. Let's see it from their perspective and then train them and help them get better. So we're launching that. We're finishing that up very, very soon. And we've piloted that in 12 markets. It's been very successful. Time to fill, time to offer accept is down pretty dramatically during that time frame.
That's great. Chris, quick question for you. Have you found that the hiring managers that have been in a role running a team for 20 to 30 years are some of the larger groups where you really have to pause and get them to expand their vision a little bit to hire? And I'm only saying it because that's been my experience.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if because they've been in this role or so focused for so long, it's like, let's stop for a minute. Let's break down, as you said, the behavioral aspects of who's succeeding and what they're thriving on in your culture, because that's a big part of, you could have two identical candidates, but, thinking about how they're going to fit, how they're going to flourish in that world is a big part. And sometimes hiring managers have been doing for a long time don't always stop to think about that as much as maybe they should.
Totally. Slowing them down and just going back to basics has been the best thing for us. And saying these managers have been successful for 20 or 30 years, right? That's why they've succeeded in their role. They've climbed in their role. So letting them feel good about that, but then talking about how the market's evolved. It's a candidate's market right now. They've probably never experienced it, right? Or they don't remember when they did because they like to be in power, right?
Yeah.
So we set those expectations early and often, and then we do checkbacks to make sure that we're staying on course. And the best ones, they adapt and they evolve. And now they're hiring at a much faster clip. They're being more successful. They spend more time training and developing, but hopefully your company's evolving in that too. And that's the thing, talent acquisition isn't on an island, right? We've got generally training groups within the company. We've got HR, whoever you can lean on. Talk to them about what they can help with as well to make our jobs a little easier. A lot of people don't like to talk to HR, and that's okay. We can kind of be the buffer between the people at HR, especially in sales. But talk to your training and development teams and see what they're doing to help, with onboarding classes, and then back things off of that and say, hey, I know we're doing some great training here. That's going to take some time off of you. Here's how I'd like you to spend that. Go to a university, right? Start going to campuses, have your AEs go to these networking events and really leverage them that way.
Yeah, I love that. And even here at SV Academy, we specialize in underrepresented talent, and that has its own level of challenges in terms of these are people with super, super high potential, but they may not fit the rubrics that most companies have in place. We're working with a major ERP company, and their entire sales team is white men. And so they're trying to diversify that, but their rubrics, if you dive into some of those, the questions that they're asking and the way they're framing them and, how they're looking for responses, they tend to keep hiring the very same types of people. So how do you open up the aperture of who you can actually bring on board that actually has the potential to succeed in that role? And frankly, again, that it all starts with a conversation and data. Can you show that you actually have information and facts that show that these are the types of people that will succeed in the organization, and just really expand your talent pool that way as well. Well, look, it looks like we have 4 minutes left in the webinar here. Bill, I want to kind of open things up to anybody. If there's any questions or anything that I haven't been able to cover yet today, you know, I have my contact information. I'm sure that will get shared somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah, we will.
Here.
So,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we send an email out to everybody and share that you were here and that you were talking with us. So if anybody does have any questions, feel free to reach out. It definitely is an area where there's a lot of ambiguity, which I've always amazed me, but sales hiring to me has always produced a lot of ambiguity in an organization in terms of how we assess and find people. And so there's a lot of different ways to go at it. And I think you guys have brought some good ideas to the top. So Michael, I will share your information out and we can get that out to everybody. And definitely, if the early stage hires in your world or something that you look at, if you run a BDR SDR team, definitely I would recommend taking a look at Michael's organization, because I do love the fact that they bring underrated, not underrated, but undervalued people into professional careers. And that's something that I think is phenomenal and that we should do more of. And definitely gives people an opportunity to step into a role that otherwise may not be available to them. And I will say, my best SDR ever, hands down, came from an underrepresented community hire. And I have never met a person with the type of fire, recording video, like all of the best practices you see people doing today. This one young woman came up with on her own, and she was phenomenal. Absolutely. Like, I have a couple hires in the course of my career that just stuck out to me. Like I just lucked out, and she was one of them. Scheduled more meetings than the rest of the team together. Just phenomenal. So it's definitely an X factor, as I've always called it, when hiring salespeople, of who's going to thrive and who's going to really produce. And so for me, it's always been determining what that X factor is, the soft attributes of the culture, the hard attributes of the role, the critical thinking, problem solving, and things like that. So great discussion. Any last parting words from anybody in the community, or Michael?
Yeah, I'll say, look, reach out to me. I'm happy to hop on calls, kind of walk you through some of the rubrics that we use. Of course, if you're looking to source underrepresented talent, sales, customer success, that's what we focus on. Don't pay anything. We don't charge fees in any way, shape, or form. We've got a very unique model in which we help companies not only source, screen, pre-train, and onboard, but we do it in a way where it doesn't cost you a dime. So if we can help and support in any way, shape, or form, if you just want to bat around ideas, happy to do one-on-one calls as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. So we are right at 2:00, and one of the things I try and do is end on time. So we're very close to doing that. Thank you everyone very much for your time. Hope to see you over the coming weeks. We got some fun activities coming up and topics that we're going to talk about, but sales hiring is definitely near and dear to my heart. So Michael, thank you very much for being here and participating with us. And we'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.